They sent the fat widow to feed his pigs, but the lonely rancher refused to let her go. Dry Hollow, Texas, late spring, 1887. The church kitchen in Dry Hollow smelled of burnt cornbread and old pork fat thick in the air like a secret no one wanted to name. Damp aprons clung to bodies, and steam from the stew pot curled into the stained glass sunlight that filtered in through the high windows, casting red and gold blotches across the scuffed floorboards. Widowed women in dark faded dresses bustled around the space, clanging spoons, slicing onions, whispering judgments under their breath as they stirred pots meant for the poor. It was their duty, their godliness, but charity had sharp teeth here. On the support beam near the pantry, a handwritten notice had been freshly nailed up that morning. Help wanted feeding pigs. Weldon Ranch. Fair pay. A shrill laugh sliced through the air. Well, would you look at that? Fair pay for feeding pigs. What are they feeding them? Gold. Another woman snorted. Pigs probably have better manners than most men in this town. Then came the voice that always followed. The dry cutting tone of Prudence Adultery, the self-declared matron of Dry Hollow's female virtue. I know just the girl for the job, she said with a wicked smile. Mildred, my stars, she's practically family to those hogs already. Laughter erupted, bouncing off the low ceiling like gunfire. In the far corner, hunched over a bucket of potatoes, sat Mildred. She was 24, but her silence made her seem older. Her round face flushed a deep crimson, and her hands, rough from years of work, paused mid-peel. She did not look up. She never did. She probably wouldn't even need a bucket, someone added cruelly. Just let her roll around with them. Saves time. More laughter. The kind that didn't come from joy, but from the sheer pleasure of aiming low. Mildred's fingers trembled as she resumed peeling faster, harder, like she could slice the humiliation off her skin. Her dress clung to her back with sweat. The room was too hot. Or maybe it was just the shame. She's still here eating our food, taking up space, another muttered just loud enough. Let her earn her keep. Then came the quiet voice that always held weight. Girls, said Martha. The kitchen fell to a hush. Sister Martha didn't need to yell. Her eyes were enough, cool, tired, and unwavering. She looked from the paper on the post to Mildred without a word. That glance said everything. You know the rules. You want shelter. You take what work comes. No pity, just policy. Mildred swallowed. Her throat was tight. Her hand slipped on a potato and cut her thumb. She barely flinched. Blood welled up bright against her dark skin. She set down the knife, wiped her hands on her apron, and stood. Her legs were stiff from crouching. Her back ached, but she didn't complain. She didn't protest. She walked to the notice and pulled it down, folding it carefully, as if the creases might protect her from what came next. About time, someone whispered. She turned to leave, but paused. Just a moment, just long enough to hope foolishly maybe, that someone would say it was a joke, that she didn't have to go, that she mattered enough to be spared. No one did. The door creaked as she stepped into the late morning sun. The dust greeted her like an old enemy. Behind her, the kitchen filled with laughter again. That same afternoon, the dirt road to Weldon Ranch stretched long and empty, flanked by dry grass and stubborn mesquite trees. Dust clung to Mildred's boots with every step, her hem heavy from the walk, her breath shallow. The soles of her shoes were splitting, and each stone bit at her heel like a cruel reminder. She had nowhere else to go. The midday sun beat down, indifferent. Sweat soaked through the back of her dress. Her shoulders ached from the weight of the cloth bag slung over one arm. She had brought nothing but a clean apron and her pride, thin as it was. As she rounded the bend, the ranch came into view. The place looked tired. Weather-worn fences leaned like old men who had seen too many storms. A rusted gate swung half open, creaking with the wind. And beyond it, the barn, a hulking thing of splintered wood and dark shadows, sat like a beast with its mouth half open. Pigs squealed in the pens beside it, the sharp wet stink of them hitting her like a slap. Flies buzzed in lazy circles. The place felt forgotten by time, by warmth, by everything but necessity. She stepped past the gate, trying to keep her footsteps quiet on the gravel path. Her throat was dry, her hands shook. Then she saw him. Seth Weldon stood in the shadow of the barn, one hand braced against the doorframe, the other gripping a feed bucket. He was tall, taller than she expected, with broad shoulders under a worn brown jacket that had seen better years. His hair was black, pulled back at the nape, and his jaw looked like it had not smiled in years. His eyes, steel gray and sharp, fixed on her. They did not narrow in suspicion. They did not soften in welcome. They simply stared. Mildred stopped a few paces from the barn. She could feel her heart thudding in her chest, slow and loud. Seth took one step forward, then another. When he came into the light, she could see the faint lines around his eyes, the sun-darkened skin, the calluses on his hands. A man carved from hard labor and long silence. His gaze dropped quick but clear to her shoes caked with mud and peeling apart. Then to her hands red and swollen from the walk. And for just a moment, barely more than a breath, something in his expression shifted. Not pity, not kindness, recognition, maybe. Then it vanished like a door slammed shut from the inside. He stopped a few feet in front of her, voice flat as dust. "Someone from town sent you, didn't they?" Mildred opened her mouth, but nothing came. She clenched her jaw. He waited. "You do not look like you want to be here," he added. She swallowed, then lifted her chin. "They sent me, yes," she said. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "They thought it had be funny." A muscle in his jaw twitched. He looked past her toward the road as if expecting to see the town watching from the hills. "This some kind of joke to them," he muttered. Not a question, a statement. He turned back to her. "Well," he asked, "you here to laugh like the rest?" Her eyes flashed just for a second. "No," she said, "I am here to work." He studied her, that unreadable stare cutting through the dust and heat. "You expect me to believe that?" "I don't expect anything," she replied. "I need work. I don't want charity. Just a chance." The wind kicked up, scattering dry leaves between them. A pig snorted loudly behind the barn, breaking the stillness. Seth looked at her again. Not down, not away. Then, with a grunt, he stepped aside, motioning to the gate with a nod. "You want to feed pigs," he said. "Then you'd better get to it." He turned and disappeared into the shadows of the barn, leaving the path open behind him. Mildred stood still for a moment, hand tightening on the strap of her bag. Then she stepped forward, not because she was ready, but because she had nothing left to lose. Weldon Ranch. Early the next morning, the sky was still pale with dawn when Mildred returned, her boots crunching over dry gravel, the morning chill clinging to the folds of her dress. She said nothing. Seth had said even less the evening before, but the barn gate had been left open. That was permission enough. The stench hit her like a wall the moment she stepped inside. Sharp hot animal pig filth layered thick from days, maybe weeks of neglect. The air was heavy with it, swarming with flies that danced above the troughs. She did not flinch. She rolled up her sleeves, tied a handkerchief over her nose, and set to work. There were 5 pens, each one a mess of half-rotted feed, waste, and muddied straw. She started at the first, grabbing a rusted shovel and dragging out the muck in slow, steady piles. Her back screamed by the second load, her arms already trembling. Still, she kept going. The pigs grunted, unconcerned by her presence, nosing at the corners of their pens. They were large and loud, and one nearly knocked over her bucket, but she held her ground. She had dealt with worse than pigs. At least they did not lie. By mid-morning, her dress was soaked through, her hands blistered, her stomach ached from the effort. But she did not pause. She remembered how it used to be years ago, waking before sunup with her husband, fixing coffee before tending the goats and chickens. The smell of hay, the warmth of routine, the small things that made her feel like a woman with purpose. Before sickness took him, before pity took her place. Now she scraped at caked-on slop, sweat running down her temples, dirt streaking her arms, no one watching, no one clapping, just work. And still something had changed. When she stepped out to empty the waste, she saw it. A tin canteen placed carefully on the fence post. Full, cool. She hadn't left one there. She unscrewed the cap and drank slowly, the water sweet and sharp in her mouth. Her hands trembled slightly as she lowered it. Next to the canteen, draped neatly over the lowest rail, was a folded cloth, clean linen, white with a single blue stitch along the edge, right at her reach. She stared at it for a long moment, then took it, wiped her face, and pressed the fabric to her cheek for one quiet second before folding it again and setting it back. Seth did not appear, not once. But his presence was felt in those silent offerings. He had noticed her blistered palms, her parched lips, her effort. He said nothing, but his actions whispered something she had not heard in years. I see you. By late afternoon, the first 2 pens were done. She moved on to the third, scrubbing the metal trough with a bristle brush, pushing grit from the corners. The sun hung low behind the hills, casting long shadows over the yard. She paused only once to roll her shoulders and breathe. From the barn, there was the sound of hammering. Seth somewhere within, mending wood or fixing hinges. He did not call out, but she could hear him. Methodical, measured. 2 people working in the same silence. It was not unpleasant. It was not loneliness. It was something else entirely. Mildred returned to her scrubbing, hands raw, but steady. She would not stop. Not now. Not when the silence finally made room for her. By late afternoon, the clouds began to gather. The wind shifted. Cooler now, restless, and the smell of rain crept in through the air like a quiet warning. Mildred was hauling the last bucket of feed toward the third pen when the first drop landed on her forearm. Then another, and then the sky opened all at once. The rain came down hard, heavy as stones, drumming against the tin roof of the barn and soaking her within seconds. The dirt beneath her feet turned to slick mud. Her boots slipped as she tried to steady the bucket. She almost made it, but then her foot caught on a rut and she went down hard. The bucket tipped, sloshing feet across the wet ground, and she landed in the middle of it, hands and knees deep in cold mud. For a moment, she just lay there, chest heaving, hair plastered to her forehead, mud stray across her face like war paint. The pigs squealed nearby, delighted by the chaos. She could not tell if the sting in her eyes was from the rain or her own. Humiliation. She started to push herself up and then he was there. Seth didn't shout, didn't hesitate. 1 second she was alone in the storm and the next he was striding through it, coatless, boots sinking in the mud with each step. He didn't say a word as he pulled his heavy coat from his back and swung it around her shoulders in one swift, sure motion. The fabric swallowed her whole, warm, dry, worn with time, and it smelled faintly of cedar and dust and something human. He knelt beside her, one strong arm steadying her elbow and helped her to her feet without a single grunt of effort. Her hand slipped on his sleeve, and she nearly fell again. But he held her up. Not tightly, just enough. Still silent. Together they moved toward the house, the downpour blurring the world around them into gray streaks. Seth's body blocked the worst of the wind. His hand remained lightly on her back. Not possessive, not guiding, just present. At the front steps, he shouldered the door open with one solid push and led her inside. The house was dim and spare. A small fire crackled in the hearth. The scent of wood smoke drifted through the air. Seth walked her to the kitchen and pulled out a chair. Mildred sank into it, soaked to the bone, her hands trembling as she pulled the coat tighter around her. Mud dripped from her hem. Next chapter coming soon.